I've always hated the phrase perfect marriage, because the older I get, the more I realize that perfect usually means we're good at pretending. Still, if you'd asked anyone in our social circle 2 months ago who the happiest couple they knew was, I guarantee most of them would have said me and Daniel. We'd been married for 6 years, no kids yet. Though that was more by choice than circumstance. We traveled a lot, had those matching luggage tags with our initials engraved, the type of couple who remembered each other's coffee orders and sent funny reels back and forth during work hours. I used to think that kind of connection was bulletproof. Daniel's one of those people who can walk into a room full of strangers and walk out with 3 new friends and a job offer. He's tall, effortlessly charming, and has this way of making you feel like the only person in the world when he's talking to you. My mom calls it movie star syndrome. I used to call it lucky I'm his wife. I won't lie, I liked being seen with him, not just because of how he looked, but because he was mine, and he seemed so proud to have me by his side. At least, that's what I thought. The wedding that started all of this was my cousin Sarah. She's a few years younger than me, and we've always been close. I was basically her unpaid wedding planner for the past year. I helped her pick flowers, dress colors, even recommended a few vendors, including the photographer. I'd stumbled across the photographer's Instagram a few months earlier while searching for local creatives. Her name was Emma, young, maybe late 20s, with that effortlessly artsy vibe, wavy hair, oversized sweaters, captions that sounded like poetry. Her work was stunning, soft, romantic tones, candid shots that looked stolen from a movie scene. I told Sarah she had to book her, and she did. I had no idea I was basically opening the door and rolling out a red carpet for my husband's mistress. The rehearsal dinner was the first time Daniel met Emma. She showed up with her camera hanging from a leather strap across her body, smiling like she already knew everyone. Sarah introduced us, and I remember feeling instantly warm toward her. She was friendly but not overbearing, the kind of person you want at a wedding because she puts people at ease. Daniel shook her hand, and there was this little pause, nothing major, just a beat too long, like they were silently sizing each other up. I noticed it, but in that moment, I told myself I was imagining it. Later that night, I caught him talking to her at the bar while I was helping Sarah's mom gather decorations. They were laughing, nothing inappropriate. Just easy, too easy. Again, I brushed it off. My husband's a friendly guy, that's who he is. Sarah's wedding was beautiful, warm September sunlight, a ceremony under a big oak tree, the air smelling faintly like apples from the orchard nearby. I was a bridesmaid, so most of the day I was running around in a pale blue dress, fixing makeup smudges and making sure Sarah didn't trip on her veil. Daniel wasn't in the bridal party, so he floated between groups, chatting with Sarah's college friends, making jokes with her uncles, and I noticed hovering near Emma more than once. At one point, I saw her hand him her camera while she adjusted something on her tripod. He looked awkward holding it, like it weighed a ton. They laughed about it, and she gave him this small, almost private smile. It was nothing, absolutely nothing. That's what I told myself, except I kept catching moments like that, him standing a little too close when she showed him a photo on her camera screen, her brushing something off his shoulder, probably lint, maybe nothing at all, but in a way that lingered just half a second longer than necessary. And every time I saw something, this weird little knot in my stomach would tighten. I told myself it was wedding stress. I'd been so wrapped up in Sarah's big day, my mind was just playing tricks on me. After dinner, when the dance floor was packed, I noticed Daniel wasn't around. I scanned the room and found him outside on the patio with Emma. They weren't touching, just standing close, heads bent toward each other. I remember thinking it was strange, because she was supposed to be inside capturing the bouquet toss. When I walked out, they broke apart slightly, and Daniel acted like he'd just been telling her a funny story about me. Later that night, in the hotel room, I asked him casually, "So, what were you and Emma talking about outside?" He shrugged. "Oh, just about cameras. I was telling her how I'm useless with tech." It was a reasonable answer, a perfectly reasonable, boring answer, but something about the way he said it, eyes not quite meeting mine, stuck with me. I let it go. The morning after the wedding, Daniel was in an unusually good mood. Now, I don't mean the normal that was a fun wedding kind of good mood, I mean glowing. He was whistling in the shower, humming while he packed his bag, even dancing a little when he thought I wasn't looking. "You're chipper," I teased, sipping coffee on the hotel balcony. "It was a great night," he said, stretching like a cat in the sun. "Good people, good music, great food. I love weddings." Daniel has never loved weddings. He's tolerated them mostly for the open bar, but this was different. We drove home that afternoon, and I noticed he was glued to his phone more than usual. Nothing crazy, just a lot of smiling at the screen, typing quickly, flipping the phone over when I glanced his way. Now, this is where I need to explain something about myself. I'm not a jealous person by nature. I've never been one of those wives who snoops through her husband's messages or demands to know where he is every second. I trust people until they give me a reason not to, at least, I used to. A couple of days later, Daniel came home from work later than usual. I was making dinner, and his phone left on the counter lit up with a notification. It was a text from someone saved as E. I don't know why my stomach clenched when I saw that, probably because I'd just met an E who happened to be young, beautiful, and had spent a lot of time near my husband last weekend. I glanced at the screen. But the message preview only said, "Can't stop thinking about," before it disappeared. Daniel walked in a moment later, smiling like nothing was wrong. He kissed me on the forehead, grabbed his phone, and slid it into his pocket without unlocking it. I didn't say anything. My mind was screaming, but my mouth stayed shut. I wanted to believe it was innocent. The first needed to believe it. That night, after Daniel fell asleep, I pulled up Emma's Instagram. There it was, a new post from the wedding, a black and white candid shot of the reception, with the caption, "Some nights are magic." Daniel was in the background laughing, looking at her, not at the camera. I zoomed in until the pixels blurred. But even then, I could see it, that stupid half smile he only does when he's completely relaxed, like he's letting his guard down, the same smile he used to give me when we were dating. I scrolled through the rest of her posts, looking for more. Nothing obvious, but my brain kept replaying the moments I'd seen at the wedding: the camera handoff, the patio conversation, the way her hand brushed his shoulder. It was like trying to piece together a puzzle with only a handful of pieces. But the picture forming in my head was ugly. 2 weeks later, Daniel mentioned he was going to meet a friend for coffee after work. I asked who. He hesitated just long enough to make my pulse spike. "Evan," he said finally. "Now here's the thing. Daniel doesn't have a friend named Evan, at least, not one he's ever mentioned." "Evan?" I repeated. "Yeah, from work," he said, too casually. "New guy we've been talking about collaborating on a project." I wanted to press, but I didn't. I told myself if I made a big deal out of nothing, I'd just look insecure. That weekend, we were watching a movie on the couch when his phone buzzed again. Another text from E. This time I caught the whole preview before he snatched it up. "Still smiling about last night?" My heart did that weird drop where it feels like your insides just fell into your shoes. I didn't say anything then, either. I think part of me was still in denial, the other part was curious. I wanted more pieces of the puzzle before I confronted him, so I waited. About a month after the wedding, Sarah sent out a link to the shared photo album. I was excited. I love wedding photos, and I was especially looking forward to seeing the candid shots. I poured a glass of wine, curled up on the couch, and opened the album. At first, it was everything you'd expect. Sarah glowing in her dress, guests laughing, kids twirling on the dance floor. Then I hit photo number 32. It was a shot of the reception taken from across the room, Emma in the foreground adjusting her camera strap. In the background, Daniel was leaning toward her, saying something that made her smile. I kept scrolling. Photo 41, Daniel holding her camera again, grinning like a fool while she looked at him, not the lens. Photo 58, outside on the patio, the exact moment I'd seen them together from the angle of the shot. It looked almost intimate, like a couple sharing a private moment away from the crowd. By photo 72, my hands were shaking in every frame they appeared in together. The body language screamed familiarity, not strangers chatting, not photographer and guest, familiar, comfortable. I downloaded the entire album. That night, I told Daniel the photos were amazing. He nodded, said Sarah looked beautiful, then changed the subject. Not a word about Emma. I didn't bring her up either. I just started quietly keeping track of everything. The late nights, the texts, the way his phone never left his side anymore. Every small thing on its own could be explained away together. They formed a pattern I couldn't ignore. The thing about wedding albums is that they're supposed to tell a love story. Every photo is meant to capture joy, the couple's joy, the guest's joy, even the little in-between moments that nobody notices until they're frozen in time. But when I looked at Sarah's album, it didn't tell one love story, it told two. One was Sarah and her new husband, smiling under fairy lights, hands linked like nothing could ever break them apart. The other was Daniel and Emma, threading themselves into the background of someone else's happy day. I waited until Daniel was asleep before I went back through the album again. This time, I wasn't just scrolling, I was studying, zooming and taking screenshots, saving anything that felt off. There were at least 6 different moments where they were in the same frame, always just a little closer than strangers would stand, always angled toward each other like magnets. In one photo, Emma was laughing, her head tilted back, Daniel leaning in with this open smile that made my stomach turn. In another, she had her hand on his arm, light, casual, but still there. It wasn't the kind of touching you do with someone you've just met, it was the kind of touching you do when you already know how the other person will respond. I pulled up the photo metadata timestamps. Each image had a record of the exact moment it was taken. I started making notes. 6:14 p.m. Them at the bar. 6:37 p.m. Her brushing something off his jacket. 8:02 p.m. The patio. The thing that hit me hardest? There were no photos of Daniel during key moments when he should have been with me. The bouquet toss, the cake cutting, the family group shots he was missing. And now, I knew exactly where he'd been instead. I wasn't the kind of wife who snooped, or I hadn't been, until that night, at around 2 a.m. I slipped his phone from the nightstand. My hands were clammy, my heart beat loud in my ears. I told myself I was being ridiculous, that I'd find nothing and feel ashamed for even looking. He was still there in his contacts. I opened the thread. The first few messages were tame enough jokes, little snippets about photography, music recommendations, but as I scrolled up, the tone shifted. Inside jokes, flirty emojis, late night wish you were here texts, and then there it was, a message from the night of the wedding, timestamped at 11:47 p.m. Less than an hour after we'd gone back to our hotel. Emma, you looked so good tonight, couldn't take my eyes off you. Daniel, same, had to stop myself from touching you, too much, too risky. My stomach flipped, and I felt my throat tighten. It wasn't just a crush, this wasn't a new thing, they had history. I screenshotted everything, sent it to my own email with a vague subject line so he wouldn't notice. Then I put his phone back and lay in bed staring at the ceiling, my mind playing and replaying every moment from the past month like a reel. The smiles, the patio, the missing hours, and yet I still didn't confront him, not yet. Here's the thing, when you have suspicions but no proof, you're at their mercy. They can gaslight you, twist your words, make you feel crazy, but when you have proof, that's power, and I wasn't ready to give mine up. So I decided I'd keep watching, keep collecting, let him think I was clueless. If he was careless enough to flirt in public at a family wedding, he'd slip up again. 2 weeks later, Emma posted an Instagram story, a picture of a coffee cup across from hers, no face, no tag, just 2 mugs on a small cafe table, sunlight streaming in. I almost let it go, until I noticed the cuff of a very familiar shirt sleeve in the corner of the frame, blue and white checks, the one Daniel had worn the night he went to meet Evan. I took a screenshot before she could delete it. Out of curiosity and maybe a little spite, I called Sarah one afternoon under the guise of asking about her honeymoon. After a few minutes of chit-chat, I casually asked, "Hey, how's Emma been? Did she send you all the edited photos yet?" "She did," Sarah said honestly. "She was amazing to work with, said she had such a great time at the wedding, especially talking to Daniel. She mentioned it twice." That stopped me cold. "Really?" I said, keeping my tone light. "Yeah." Sarah laughed. She said he was so easy to talk to and made her laugh. "I guess they have mutual friends or something." Mutual friends, that was news to me. At this point, the maybe I'm imagining it phase was over. My marriage wasn't just cracked, it was breaking. But instead of confronting Daniel right away, I decided I wanted everything, every scrap of evidence, every text, every hint that could back me up. When I blew this thing up, I started keeping a hidden folder on my laptop labeled recipes. It was filled with screenshots, texts, Instagram stories, the coffee sleeve photo, even my own notes about their interactions at the wedding. It felt cold, calculated, but I wasn't building a case just to confront him. I was building one to ruin him if I had to. By this point, I wasn't a wife anymore, not in the way I used to be. I was an investigator, a quiet shadow in my own home, taking mental notes, waiting for him to hand me the final pieces of the puzzle. It's amazing how differently you see someone once you start looking for cracks. It happened on a Wednesday. Daniel came home late, again, saying he'd been stuck in traffic after a work meeting. When he set his phone on the counter, I caught the faintest whiff of perfume, not mine, something light and floral, like jasmine. "Traffic, huh?" I asked, handing him a plate. "Yeah," he said, sitting down. "City was a mess today." I nodded, smiling, while my brain screamed because I'd checked Google Maps earlier. There had been no traffic. I already knew E was Emma, but now I wanted proof of just how far they'd gone. I waited until he was in the shower, then opened his phone again. This time, I went to his photo gallery. Nothing suspicious at first, just some memes, random work screenshots, a few pictures of us from weeks ago. But then I opened the recently deleted folder. There they were, 3 selfies of him and Emma, sitting at an outdoor cafe, her leaning in, laughing, his hand resting on the table way too close to hers. The timestamps matched the Evan coffee date. I saved them, emailed them to myself, and then put the phone back exactly how I'd found it. That weekend, we were having dinner at home when I decided to test the waters. "Hey," I said casually, Sarah told me Emma really enjoyed talking to you at the wedding. Daniel's fork paused mid-air. Oh, yeah? She's nice, easy to talk to, seems like it, I said, sipping my wine. He gave me a quick look, just a flicker of something like caution, and then smiled. Yeah, she's a cool person, good photographer, too. I didn't press, I just let the silence hang for a second too long before changing the subject. I wanted him to feel the edge in my tone without being able to call me out for accusing him. A few days later, I decided to fact-check something Sarah had said, that Daniel and Emma had mutual friends. I went to Emma's Instagram and scanned her followers list. Sure enough, I recognized one, a guy named Matt who Daniel used to work with. That was the bridge. I messaged Matt under the guise of catching up and casually dropped Emma's name. Oh yeah, he replied. I introduced them ages ago. She shot an event for us last year and they hit it off. I asked when exactly that was. He said last April. Last April, over a year before Sarah's wedding, which meant this wasn't new, this wasn't some random post-wedding flirtation. They'd known each other for at least 16 months. That night, I went through his phone again. But this time I dug deeper. I didn't just check texts, I checked his hidden photo vault app. There were 12 images in there. Most were selfies of Emma, some in cafes, some clearly taken in his apartment when I wasn't home. One stopped me cold, a mirror selfie of Daniel, shirtless, standing behind Emma as she smirked into the camera. My chest tightened, and I had to sit down. I'd been suspecting, but that was confirmation. The next morning, Daniel mentioned he'd be working late again. I played it cool. Meeting Evan again? I asked, tilting my head. He hesitated, the smallest pause, but enough for me to notice. Yeah, he said finally. We're hashing out some project details. I smiled sweetly and said, well, tell Evan I said hi. The flicker of panic in his eyes was everything I needed to see. You might be wondering why I didn't just throw the phone in his face and scream. I'll tell you why. Because I didn't just want to catch him, I wanted to end him, emotionally, socially, publicly. I knew that if I moved too soon, he'd wriggle out with excuses. It was just flirting, we were just friends, nothing physical happened, but with enough evidence, he wouldn't get the chance to spin it. I wasn't going to walk away empty-handed, I was going to scorch the earth. I started thinking about who else needed to know Sarah. For one, the woman whose wedding Emma had turned into their personal date night, and maybe more, Emma's clients, her little artsy Instagram following, Daniel's co-workers. I could already picture the captions. Here's the wedding photographer who hooks up with married men she meets on the job. But I needed one last thing, undeniable proof. In his own words, that proof would come sooner than I expected. I got my opening on a random Thursday night. Daniel had been in the kitchen, pouring himself a whiskey, when his phone lit up on the counter. I don't know if it was the universe or just dumb luck, but the preview popped up before he could grab it. It was from E. Can't wait for tomorrow, face blowing a kiss. He saw me looking in for the first time. Instead of a quick cover-up, he froze. I didn't yell, didn't cry, I just looked at him and said, tomorrow? His eyes flicked to the phone, then back to me. It's nothing, work stuff with E? That tiny pause again. He tried to smile. You know her, Emma, she's helping me with. Helping you with what, Daniel? My voice was still calm, too calm, the kind of calm that makes people nervous. He set the whiskey down, exhaled, and rubbed the back of his neck. Look, I don't want you to get the wrong idea. Oh, so there's an idea to get? He sighed. She's a friend, we've been talking, that's all. A friend who sends you flirty emojis? Who meets you for coffee when you're supposed to be with your fake friend Evan? Who takes mirror selfies in your apartment? The color drained from his face. Okay, he said finally, holding his hands up like I'd pulled a gun. It's not what you think. It's exactly what I think. I snapped. I have the texts. Daniel, the photos. I know you've known her since last April. I know you were with her the night of Sarah's wedding. When you should have been with me, so why don't you stop insulting my intelligence and just tell me how long you've been sleeping with her? His jaw tightened. It's been a while. How long? He looked at the floor. About a year. It was almost laughable. A year? I said, you expect me to believe that when Matt told me he introduced you to 16 months ago? That got his attention. His head snapped up. You talked to Matt? Oh, you'd be surprised who I've talked to, I said. Now tell me the truth. He hesitated, then muttered, fine, it started a few months after we met. We hit it off. It wasn't supposed to mean anything. Then came the excuses. I wasn't happy, we weren't connecting, it just happened. She made me feel different. I stood there, letting him talk, letting him dig his own grave. You know what's funny? I said when he finally shut up, you've been telling me for years that you don't believe in soulmates, but clearly, you've been auditioning for one behind my back. I asked him point blank if he'd been with her physically. He didn't answer right away. which was answer enough. When I pushed, he said, "Yes, but not that many times." I laughed sharp, humorless. "Not that many times, oh, well, in that case, I guess it's fine." Standing there in our kitchen, watching him squirm, I realized something. I didn't feel the way I thought I would. There was no cinematic heartbreak, no collapse into sobs, just a cold, steady anger, the kind of anger that doesn't fade. Because this wasn't just about the cheating, it was about the lies, the way he'd made me second guess myself, the way he'd smiled in my face while building an entire secret life behind my back. You'd think I'd kick him out immediately, but I didn't, not yet. I wanted him comfortable. I wanted him thinking maybe we could work through it that way. He wouldn't see what was coming. I let him sleep in our bed, but I didn't touch him. He probably thought I was just processing. In reality, I was finalizing my plan, because now, I had everything. Screenshots of texts, photos, a verbal admission that he'd been sleeping with her for over a year, and soon, I was going to have one more thing: witnesses. The next morning, Daniel acted like nothing had happened. He made coffee, kissed my cheek, asked if I wanted him to grab groceries on his way home. I smiled back. I think that scared him more than if I'd thrown the coffee in his face, because my smile wasn't forgiveness, it was quiet calculation. I called Sarah that afternoon. I didn't dump everything on her at once. I eased her and started with, "Hey, do you remember Emma mentioning Daniel a lot at your wedding?" She laughed. "Yeah." She wouldn't shut up about him. My voice stayed light, but my words sharpened. "Well, that's because they've been sleeping together for over a year." Silence. "Then, you're joking." I told her everything: the texts, the photos, the confession, and then I sent her screenshots, including the ones from her own wedding album. Her reaction was immediate: fury, hurt, and, surprisingly, shame. "She used my wedding to sneak around with your husband? That's disgusting." Sarah's husband is a lawyer. She put him on speaker, and he immediately started talking about breach of contract and unprofessional conduct in relation to Emma's photography business, apparently, using a client's event as an opportunity for personal extracurriculars could be grounds for a lawsuit, especially if there were time-stamped photos proving she'd been distracted from her actual job. I didn't even have to push. Sarah wanted blood as badly as I did. That night, I let Daniel talk about his busy week while I nodded along. Inside, I was arranging the order of my dominoes. Sarah would hit Emma with the legal threat first. Then, once Emma was on the defensive, I dropped the social media bomb, not just on her account, but in our shared friend group. And finally, I'd serve Daniel with divorce papers, complete with an evidence packet thick enough to choke him. But first, I needed one more layer: witnesses who could confirm the relationship wasn't just texting. 2 days later, Daniel said he was meeting Evan again. I told him, "Okay, have fun." Kissed him goodbye, and waited exactly 20 minutes before getting in my car. I already knew where they'd be: the same cafe from the Instagram story. I parked across the street, sunglasses on, hood up, and waited. Sure enough, they walked in together, no hesitation, no pretending they'd arrived separately. She touched his arm as they went inside. I took photos, lots of them. I sent those cafe photos to Sarah, along with the caption, "If she tries to claim it's innocent, here's." "Last night," she responded, "I've got the lawsuit letter ready." Sarah sent the letter the next day. It was polite but firm, outlining breach of contract, damages, and the possibility of going public if Emma didn't respond. From what Sarah told me later, Emma's reply was panicked. She tried to downplay it, said Daniel was just a friend, but when Sarah forwarded her my evidence, Emma went silent. Daniel still had no idea. He was moving around our house like everything was fine, talking about weekend plans, even suggesting a date night, and I played along, laughed at his jokes, let him think I was softening. In reality, I was waiting for the perfect moment, a moment when he'd feel safe enough to fall, so the drop would hurt the most. I waited until Saturday. Why Saturday? Because Daniel's family was coming over for brunch: his mother, his sister, his cousin Matt, the one who introduced him to Emma, and, conveniently, Sarah had agreed to stop by with a flash drive full of wedding photos. If I was going to burn it all down, I wanted an audience. That morning, Daniel was in an unusually good mood. He even brought me coffee in bed. "Thought you deserved it," he said. "Oh, I did." I showered, dressed, and smiled through every minute of prep. I even wore the blue dress he'd once called his favorite. I wanted him relaxed. I wanted him thinking we were back to normal. By noon, everyone was in the dining room, laughter, clinking glasses, harmless family chatter. Then Sarah cleared her throat. "Oh, by the way, I brought the wedding slideshow. Thought we could watch it together." Daniel stiffened. I saw it, the flicker in his eyes, the twitch in his jaw, but he didn't stop her. The TV lit up, photos cycled through, smiling guests, the cake, dancing, and then, there it was, a shot of Daniel, mid-laugh, Leaning so close to Emma their faces nearly touched. Her hand was on his knee. Matt frowned. Wait. That's from my cousin's table. When did you two even meet? Daniel stammered. Sarah clicked to the next photo, another of them, this time in the corner of the reception, her hand tucked into his suit jacket. Sarah's voice was cool. You were supposed to be with your wife for the couple's dance, Daniel, but you were busy. Before Daniel could speak, I stood up. I might as well save you the trouble of lying, I said, my voice clear over the sudden silence. Daniel's been sleeping with Emma for over a year. I have the texts, the photos, the confession, and apparently, he decided my friend's wedding was the perfect place to get started. Gasps. His mother covered her mouth. Matt looked like he'd been slapped. Daniel tried to stand. That's not. I cut him off, pulling a thick envelope from my bag. This is the divorce petition inside. You'll find printed evidence. Don't worry. Emma gets a copy too, sent to her work email, so her boss can see it. I turned to Sarah. And thank you, by the way, for helping me send her a little legal reminder about her photography ethics. Hopefully she can find a new career that doesn't involve using client events as hookup opportunities. Sarah smirked, happy to help, while Daniel sat frozen. I pulled out my phone. Oh, and before I forget, I tapped a button. A scheduled post went live on Facebook, Instagram, and our shared friend group's WhatsApp. It was a collage of screenshots, his texts to Emma, her selfies in our bedroom, and the cafe photos from last week. Caption: when you find out your husband's business meetings are with your friend, thanks for the memories, Daniel and Emma. May you enjoy each other's company as much as I've enjoyed gathering receipts. Phones buzzed around the table. Daniel's sister stared at her screen, then at him, pure disgust on her face. Matt muttered, "You're unbelievable." Daniel reached for me. "We can talk about this." "No," I said, stepping back. "You talk to your lawyer and Emma, oh, and maybe your landlord, since her address is about to be a little less private." His eyes widened. "What did you do?" "Nothing illegal," I said sweetly, "but her neighbors might find it interesting that she spends so much time with a married man." I didn't wait for him to respond. I picked up my bag, kissed Sarah on the cheek, and walked out to my car. Behind me, I heard raised voices, chairs scraping, and the unmistakable sound of Daniel's mother saying, "How could you?" By the time I pulled into my friend's driveway, my phone was blowing up. Friends, coworkers, even Daniel's own relatives messaging me things like "good for you" and "he's always been a snake." I blocked his number. For the first time in months, maybe years, I felt light, not happy, not yet, but free. For the first few days after the explosion, I didn't hear a word from Daniel, not a text, not a call. I figured he was too busy putting out fires, or maybe just choking on the smoke I'd left behind. By the end of the week, Sarah called with an update. "Emma shut down her business page," she said, barely containing her glee. "Too many one-star reviews, and not just from people we know. Strangers are piling on after seeing your post. Screenshots have been shared in a local wedding group. She's officially radioactive." Apparently, some of her future clients canceled their bookings, citing ethical concerns. Her own photography mentor posted a vague but pointed status about professional boundaries that everyone in their circle knew was about her. I almost felt sorry for her, almost. Then came Daniel's turn. His boss called me me to politely ask if I would take down my post because it was reflecting poorly on the company. I told him I'd consider it if Daniel signed over the house in the divorce. 2 days later, my lawyer received an amended settlement offer. Guess who now owned the house outright? If Daniel thought people would eventually move on, he was wrong. His friends ghosted him. His cousin Matt blocked him on everything. Even his own sister unfollowed him and publicly commented on my post, writing, "Proud of you for walking away from this garbage." It was delicious watching him lose the social network he'd been so smug about building. Was better than any apology he could have offered. 3 weeks later, I got a message from an unfamiliar number. "Hey, you don't know me, but I was seeing Daniel casually. He told me he was single. Just wanted you to know he's still lying to women. Thought you'd want to warn people." I laughed so hard I nearly cried. He'd learned nothing, so I posted a gentle reminder in the same friend group chat, for anyone tempted to believe Daniel's changed. "Here's proof he's already moved on to lying to other women. History repeats itself." Folks, the screenshots spread like wildfire. The divorce was finalized in under 2 months thanks to the settlement. I had the house, a chunk of his retirement account, and 0 contact obligations. I redecorated, sold the bed Emma had been in, got rid of the couch he loved. It felt like peeling his fingerprints off my life, one piece at a time, and, slowly, the quiet stopped feeling lonely. I ran into him once, at the grocery store. He looked older, somehow tired and smaller than I remembered. He tried to smile. "You look good." I nodded, "I know," and walked away. Months later, I heard Emma had moved to another city. Daniel was renting a one-bedroom in a questionable part of town. Me? I'd started traveling, joined a hiking group, and was flirting with a man who actually respected me. When I looked back, it wasn't with longing, it was with satisfaction, because I hadn't just survived him, I'd dismantled him piece by piece.